Forge Master of Fuses. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 451 Eternal Life. Seeing Zhao Jin's silence, Solomon Burke couldn't help but smile with pride. Zhao Jin couldn't help but clench his fists. Solomon Burke especially liked to see him look like he couldn't stand it, but couldn't get rid of it. His fingers gently slid across the special nutrition capsules and began his eternal life sermon today. In the past, it was Jim Field who inspired these people and brainwashed them. I don't know when it started, but Solomon Burke has taken over the stick from Jim Field. Nothing is more terrible than mental control. When Zhao Jin realized it, it was too late. Looking at the fanatical looks of other people like believers, Zhao Jin clenched his fists again. Solomon Burke's ups and downs voice was still echoing around, and Zhao Jin's thoughts had already flown far away. Only by emptying his mind in this way can he avoid being assimilated and remember that the characteristic nutrition capsules that Solomon Burke was playing with were filled with their former companions. Solomon Burke was still talking non-stop, and his superior attitude made Zhao Jin laugh. As human beings, who is nobler than who? Some people just want to divide people into different levels, and put themselves in the position of God. It's really ridiculous. But there are so many people who believe in Solomon Burke's argument, to the point that they forget the source of those spiritual powers and let Solomon Burke take them away. Then, he will never see those familiar spiritual power balls again. But Solomon Burke's spiritual power will be more solid. Perhaps, the spiritual power of Jim Field and Ulakami, whom he hasn't seen for a long time, is also solid? And the group of people around him who have been blinded by eternal life, they will never open their eyes, nor will they think about those brothers who are disappearing quickly. They will only be misled by Solomon Burke and blame everything on the group of children who strayed in. Even if someone has doubts, Solomon Burke will tell them as he did to him, there must be some sacrifices on the road of scientific research, but is this kind of sacrifice necessary? Use your own mental power to consolidate the mental power of others and achieve others' eternal life? It sounds ironic. Whether it is Jim Field, Ulakami, or Solomon Burke, they have never given them room for choice. They have a common goal, but not everyone can reach the end. On this road where you don't know right or wrong, everyone here, including Zhao Jin himself, is just a stepping stone for these three pharmacology bosses. Perhaps, they will never reach the end. However, even if they exhausted all their strength and sent these three to the end, standing at the top, they will never pull them up. They will only feel that the territory at the end is too small, and they are too big and take up too much space. They are so selfish. From the beginning to the end, it has always been. However, everyone here, including him back then, was blinded by the word eternal life. Now, he woke up, but had nowhere to go. He had been on a pirate ship for too long, and there was no way out. He could not live forever. So, he changed his goal. It seemed that dying with dignity was not bad. Chapter 452, Borrow 1 and Return 4. Watching Solomon Burke's back as he walked away with his special nutrition capsule, Zhao Jin curled his lips and turned to enter his studio. He had just damaged 18 beast-type mechas, and he had to replenish the stock. As a genius in mecha casting recognized by the Alliance, Zhao Jin could use many means as long as he was determined. But there were not many ways that would not be discovered by Solomon Burke and the people he had mentally controlled. Under this premise, he could still attract Tang Fan's attention and convey his meaning smoothly. Zhao Jin was not completely sure. Zhao Jin did not expect that he could communicate with Tang Fan without the wings of a phoenix. He only hoped that the Mecha Foundry on the other side would be a little smarter. In fact, the Mecha Foundry on the other side, Miss Tang Fan, was much better than he expected. The parts of the 18 beast-type mechas were placed in front of the lady, allowing her to study and play. Miss Tang Fan could still see some problems more or less. Although the technical problems of several key parts had not been solved, the beast-type mecha could not be completely imitated. But it was no problem to use the parts pulled out from the 18 mechas as Lego blocks to assemble 5 or 6 beast-type mechas for fun. Not only that, she also improved the batch of beast-type mechas made by Zhao Jin by connecting them to the mecha controlled by Dan Bailey in her memory. Although Tang Fan did not have much hope, the results were very gratifying. Although the similarity with Dan Bailey's mecha controlled by mental power was only 50 to 60%, it still greatly amazed everyone in Song Si's department. For a time, the game tablet prepared by Dan Bailey for her became a hot commodity in Song Si's department. Seeing that Song Si's department was addicted to the game and couldn't extricate themselves, Field was so nervous that his toes dug the ground, and he hinted to Song Si more than once to restrain his subordinates. Song Si smiled but didn't say anything, perfunctorily, which made Field jump up and down in anger. Time passed slowly in the research and development of Tao Qingxi and Tang Fan, the mental training of Song Si's department, and Field's jumping up and down. After a few days of rest, Solomon Burke, who had forgotten the pain after his wounds healed, launched another sneak attack. This time, it was not 18 beast-type mechas, but 36. But how could a team commanded by an amateur hide from experts like Yanjing and Song Si? Yanjing discovered them from hundreds of light years away. The snipers under his command were organized again. After 20 energy stones were thrown down and Song Si suppressed the opponent for half an hour, the goddess of victory stood on their side again. This time, there were a lot of research materials, and Miss Tang Fan's room was not even stacked. In order to make room for the research materials, Major General Song Si was driven out, and even Miss Tang Fan's next-door neighbor was not rescued. The plan of being close to the water tower to get the moon first was broken into slag, and it was impossible to put it together. Do you want a wife or a mecha? This question is too difficult. The world of adults does not need multiple-choice questions. Major General Song Si felt that he could choose both. But if we have to rank the two, Major General Song Si felt that he should choose the mecha. After all, Miss Tang Fan has always been generous in the mecha field. There is no other way. Whether in the Alliance or in this remote place, they are all on the same boat. Besides, didn't Major General Song Si agree? Borrow 1 and return 4. Chapter 453 Smell. Borrow 1 and return 4, like a tight spell, tightly strangled Song Si's throat. Looking at the increasingly mature mind-controlled mechas that were brought out from Tang Fan's room one after another, Major General Song Si felt pain and joy. The small goal of learning from the barbarians to defeat the barbarian seemed to be about to be achieved. 1 mecha, 2 mechas. Just as Song Si was counting with great pleasure, a different and unfamiliar smell suddenly broke into his nose. The smell was a little strange, and Song Si, who had a keen nose, really didn't react in his mind at once. Tao Qingxi in the dormitory next door smelled the smell later than him, but reacted first. She covered her mouth and nose at the first time, took out 3 balls from the space buckle and clamped them between her fingers, and found Song Si fully armed, and asked for the key to Tang Fan's dormitory. Although Song Si didn't smell what the smell was, he recognized the ball between Tao Qingxi's fingers at first sight. That was a gadget that Song Tong often fiddled with, the odor collector most commonly used by pharmacists. Although this gadget was safe, non-toxic, harmless, and zero pollution, Song Si still did not hand over the key. Seeing that a faint mist had already precipitated from the gap at the door of Tang Fan's dormitory, Song Si was still hesitant there. Tao Qingxi poked her back teeth and signaled Song Tong to hand over her odor collector to Song Si. With the odor collector provided by Song Tong, Song Si finally carefully opened the door of Tang Fan's dormitory, a crack, and threw the 3 balls in. The 3 fingernail-sized odor collectors immediately expanded rapidly when they encountered the milky white gas in the dormitory. After a while, they became the size of baseballs. At the same time, the thick fog in the dormitory gradually dissipated and restored a certain degree of visibility. At least, it was enough for Song Si to see Tang Fan lying unconscious on the ground at a glance. Seeing his little girl lying on the ground motionless, Song Si frowned and prepared to rush in. Tao Qingxi was quick to grab his clothes. Why don't you ask what the gas is? Song Si narrowed his eyes dangerously and asked coldly, what is it? A bitterness flashed in Tao Qingxi's eyes, and his expression was particularly solemn. I don't know what it is called, but I will never forget its taste and function. Back then, it was because of it that I became the daughter-in-law of the Field family and had a son named Field. Tao Qingxi didn't finish her words, but many people present had already understood all she wanted to express. At least, Song Si, Song Tong, Glasses and Zaya Adeo fully understood what she meant. Everyone's eyes were cast on Song Si at the same time. Major General Song, who is always calm, couldn't calm down at this moment. His hands unconsciously clenched into fists, his face was ashen, and his jawline was tightly stretched, which was very impressive. Song Tong quickly took out a breathing system from his space buckle, put it on himself, patted Song Si's shoulder, and said in a deep voice, "I'll go in and take a look first. Don't worry, the situation may not be as serious as we think." Song Tong's comfort did not make Song Si's expression look much better. He struggled to sideways and made a gap for Song Tong to pass. Then, he continued to block the dormitory door and acted as a door god. From beginning to end, his eyes never moved away from Tang Fan. Chapter 454, Hit. Tang Fan, lying on the ground, could clearly feel Song Si's gaze on her, could hear Song Tong's light footsteps as he walked towards her, could feel the temperature of the 2 fingers Song Tong placed on her neck. She could even understand Miss Tao Kingxi's incoherent words and understand her situation. But her eyelids felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds, and her body seemed to be filled with lead, completely unable to move. A few days ago, she had not had such a hard time controlling the beast-shaped mecha with her mental power as today. It felt like her mental power and body were blocked by something, and became 2 parts that didn't want to work at all. At this moment, she finally understood how Miss Tao Kingxi felt when she was hit. Naturally, all the reactions mentioned by Miss Tao Kingxi also appeared on Tang Fan one by one as time went by. Shortness of breath, faster heartbeat, and fever all over. Just when Tang Fan was about to fall into chaos, a slight tingling sensation pulled her back. However, this sobriety only lasted for 3 seconds. Tang Fan's last consciousness stayed on Song Tong's voice. Song Tong seemed to say, "The paralysis potion in the blood exceeds the maximum standard by 7 times, and the aphrodisiac potion exceeds the maximum standard by 18 times. Emergency treatment is required." Song Tong's eyes swept across Song Si and finally fell on Ms. Tao Kingxi. Song Si's eyes briefly moved away from Tang Fan and fell on Tao Kingxi, and said solemnly, "Please help Ms. Tao. No matter what the result is, Song Si, owe you one." Tao Kingxi looked at Song Si and said, "Young man, you are a fool if you don't take advantage of it, do you know?" Song Si raised his eyebrows and said in a deep voice, "If you like someone, you should respect her choice. You are a victim of the potion yourself, and you should know the feelings of the victim better than me." Tao Kingxi looked at Song Si deeply, said, "Like or not, it is useful to tell the person concerned. What's the point of talking about it after the person is unconscious?" Song Si was so angry that he fell backwards after hearing this. Looking at the potion in Tao Kingxi's hand and the little girl lying on the ground, he silently put away his sharp teeth and kept silent. His little girl has always been full of energy and calm, as if nothing can stump her. But now she is lying quietly on the ground, motionless, without the liveliness of the past. If possible, Song Si would like to suffer this for her. Facing Tao Kingxi, who can save Tang Fan from the rain, water and fire, what does it matter if she is ridiculed a few times? Forbearance for a while will bring peace, and taking a step back will bring a broad sky. Major General Song Si was doing psychological construction and directly treated Tao Kingxi as heir. As a result, Tao Kingxi was embarrassed to continue to say anything, and could only focus all his attention on Tang Fan. More than 30 years have passed in a flash, and the potion in Tang Fan and the one in Tao Kingxi back then are naturally impossible to be exactly the same. But fortunately, the antidote that Grandpa Li Bangsha used on Tao Kingxi still has a certain inhibitory effect on it. At least, Tang Fan's mind, which had been stripped away, gradually returned to her body. However, this was not a good experience. Under the effect of the love potion, Tang Fan's body temperature rose rapidly, and her limbs felt like little bugs were crawling. And she was extremely eager for physical contact. Tang Fan gritted her teeth and jumped directly into the ice water. She was shivering from the cold, and then she felt a little better. Chapter 455 2 hours. From the time the potion took effect, to the time he took out the metal container in ice cubes, to the time he jumped in, Tang Fan took less than half a minute. This lightning-fast, breathtaking operation stunned everyone present. Tao Kingxi looked at Tang Fan, whose body was frozen purple but whose expression was extremely relaxed. After hesitating for a while, she spoke with difficulty, "I'm sorry to tell you. The potion in your body has been improved many times by the other party, and the ingredients in my body have changed to a great extent. At present, it seems that this antidote that has a decisive effect on me can only suppress the medicinal properties in your body for 2 hours. Unfortunately, we don't have the time and raw materials to develop new drugs." Tang Fan's nerves, which had just relaxed, collapsed again. She stared into Tao Qingxi's eyes and asked word by word, "Can you honestly tell me how long the effect of the potion will last?" Tao Qingxi turned her head, avoiding Tang Fan's gaze, and whispered, "According to my preliminary analysis of the potion, the effect is very likely to last up to 24 hours. 24 hours? Tang Fan, who had fully felt the effect of the potion, felt a black screen before her eyes. But she still forced herself to be energetic, looked at Tao Qingxi with hope, and asked cautiously, "It's just 12 potions, it shouldn't be difficult for you." Tao Qingxi shook her head with a guilty look on her face. "I didn't expect to encounter this situation. You used the only potion I have." Tang Fan's face paled a little. She grabbed Tao Qingxi's wrist and said anxiously, "Grandpa Li Bangsha should have given you a prescription. Let's make a batch. It's just 11, it shouldn't be difficult for a genius in potion science like you." Tao Qingxi felt Tang Fan's eagerness, and a sense of powerlessness arose in her heart. She bit her lower lip and handed her light brain to Tang Fan. The prescription given by Grandpa Li Bangsha was placed in front of Tang Fan. Although Tang Fan did not have a deep understanding of pharmacy, she had read and memorized the Alliance Animal Encyclopedia and the Alliance Plant Encyclopedia, and often used them. After seeing some of the materials, the light in her eyes gradually dimmed. She did not think that she could survive the remaining 22 hours without the medicine. She shouted in self-abandonment, "Anyway, the final result is the same. Why waste such a precious medicine on me?" Tao Qingxi raised a bitter smile at the corner of his mouth. "I'll give you a chance to choose." Even if she could not escape the fate of rolling in the sheets in the end, rolling in the sheets with the person she chose, maybe she would feel less unwilling. Tao Qingxi's words made Tang Fan stunned. After a long while, she slowly loosened her hand holding Tao Qingxi's tightly, and uttered 2 words from between her teeth. "Thank you." Tao Qingxi patted her hand. "Old friend, you're welcome." After that, she strode out of Tang Fan's cold and damp dormitory. This was Tang Fan's calamity, but wasn't it her calamity as well? Seeing a beautiful girl repeating her mistakes, but she was powerless. Only Tao Qingxi knew how it felt. Seeing Ms. Tao Qingxi staggering back, Song Tong slowly closed her eyes, took several deep breaths, then slowly stood up, patted Tang Fan on the shoulder, and walked out. For the first time in her life, she hated herself, hated her poor skills, and hated her powerlessness. Chapter 456 Method. Tang Fan looked at the empty room. Tao Qingxi's words echoed in her mind, and a trace of despair spread in her eyes. In this deserted corner, Tang Fan rarely shed her strong shell, letting the tears flow freely across her fair face. Tang Fan, who was immersed in her own emotions, did not notice that Song Tong's footsteps did not go far, and she did not notice that a tall figure was approaching her. Tang Fan still did not notice Song Si approaching, but Song Si did not miss the tears on the little girl's face. Those drops of tears, like steel needles, pierced Song Si's heart, hurting her as if she had broken her bones. His fingers couldn't help but touch Tang Fan's cheek, gently wiped away the string of crystal tears, and said softly, "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Although they were half a meter apart, Tang Fan could keenly feel Song Si's warm breath, not to mention the fingertips that crossed her cheek. This unfamiliar feeling made Tang Fan tense up. "What do you want to do?" Seeing Tang Fan's defensive look, Song Si's distressed feeling disappeared, and turned into headache and toothache. He silently withdrew his hand, sucked his teeth, and asked back, "What do you think I want to do?" Song Si's unpleasant question made Tang Fan let down his guard. She pulled Song Si's sleeve, shook it, and said carefully, "You come to me at this time, do you have any other way?" Song Si looked at her pitiful look, and finally didn't get angry. He fumbled in his space for a long time before taking out a powder blue potion and handed it to Tang Fan. "This is what Mr. Li Bangsha gave me just in case. You try it first. You can eat more food, but you can't drink medicine randomly." It was the first time Tang Fan heard such words as taking the potion to try it. If it hadn't come from Song Si's mouth, Tang Fan would definitely fight back without hesitation. But the person opposite was Song Si. Tang Fan organized his words and said tactfully, "You can let me take it. But you have to tell me what this medicine is." Speaking of this, a blush appeared on Major General Song Si's face. "It's just an antidote." Song Si turned his head away and added in a low voice, "It's for the love potion." To sum up, it is the antidote for the love potion prepared by Mr. Li Bangsha for Song Si. This amount of information is a bit too much? But Tang Fan didn't have time to analyze it in detail. She had to quickly throw out the most important question. "How much do you have?" What is the range of action of the potion? Speaking of academic issues, the shyness on Song Si's face disappeared immediately. According to the old man, in theory, this potion can restrain the love potion with a concentration of 25 times, and last for up to 48 hours. Before Song Si finished speaking, Tang Fan couldn't wait to bite off the bottle cap and drank the sour antidote in one gulp. That heroic look made Song Si hold back the rest of his words. This potion is theoretically very powerful, but it has no effect on humans. As the first user of this potion, no one knows what kind of drug reaction Tang Fan will have, including the pharmacist, the potion maker, Mr. Li Bangsha. But now, it's too late to say anything. The potion has been swallowed by the little girl. All Song Si can do is wait. Chapter 457 I Like You. Every 3 minutes, Song Si asked nervously, "How do you feel now?" This made Tang Fan, who was in the ice water and numb from the cold, not know how to answer. She couldn't feel Song Si's breath half a meter away, but she didn't know whether it was the effect of the ice water, or psychological reasons, or whether the medicine really worked. But looking at Song Si's concerned eyes, she still honestly uttered 3 words, "I don't know." This answer was completely beyond Song Si's expectations. Seeing Tang Fan shivering from the cold, but still holding on, Song Si couldn't help but narrow his eyes. He approached Tang Fan and curled his lips with a smile. "I do have a way to prove it. But, the most feared thing in everything is a but." But at this moment, Tang Fan, who still lost his mind and was desperate to seek medical treatment, didn't care at all. She grabbed Song Si's sleeve and urged, "Go ahead if you have a way." "But what but?" Song Si raised his eyebrows. His expression was rare and serious. "Are you sure? You won't regret it." Tang Fan nodded impatiently. Song Si smiled and his calloused hands directly touched Tang Fan's fair face. Just when Tang Fan was stunned, his handsome face suddenly appeared in her dilated pupils, and his thin lips covered her soft red lips. The warm touch was better than all the beauty in the world, and Song Si sighed with satisfaction. Rolling, crushing, testing. Song Si instinctively wanted more. His hand left the fair cheek, slowly moved down, across the girl's waist, and kept stroking. Unfortunately, the girl under him didn't buy it. She came back to her senses from the astonishment, decisively slapped Song Si's rebellious big hand away, and used all her strength to push him away fiercely. "Song Si, do you know what you are doing?" Song Si licked his lower lip and nodded. "Of course I know. Since you are conscious and have no adverse reactions, go take a hot bath and change clothes. Although technology is very advanced now, it is better for girls to soak in cold water less." As she spoke, Tang Fan had already stood up by the edge of the metal container, stepped over the container, and approached Song Si step by step. Finally, she stretched out her slender hand and grabbed Song Si's collar. "Stop talking nonsense. I'm asking you again, do you know what you are doing?" Song Si bent down slightly to make Tang Fan and herself feel a little more comfortable, then stared into Tang Fan's eyes and said seriously, "I know very well that I did what I always wanted to do but didn't dare to do. I admit that I am suspected of taking advantage of others' misfortune. But I don't regret it. Tang Fan, you are a smart person, you should understand what I mean." At this moment, Song Si's eyes seemed to have a ball of fire that could burn people. Tang Fan couldn't help swallowing, loosened his hand, took a step back, turned his face away, and whispered, "Maybe I'm not smart enough and don't quite understand what you mean." Major General Song, who finally broke through the window paper, had no intention of letting Tang Fan go. He stretched out his hands, turned Tang Fan's face, stared into her eyes, and said word by word, "Since you don't understand, then I will say it again. I, Song Si, like you. If you don't hate to kiss just now, can you consider being with me? The kind with the purpose of getting married." Chapter 458 Struggle. Song Si's words, every word was clearly heard by Tang Fan. But the connection was beyond her comprehension. Tang Fan covered his buzzing head and growled at Song Si, "We are brother and sister." Song Si raised his eyebrows. "My Marshal Song and Ms. Yao won't mind." Tang Fan glared at him fiercely. "I mind." Song Si's expression froze on his face. It was obviously beyond Major General Song's expectation that he was blocked by someone when he confessed for the first time in his life. He told himself, more haste, less speed. Give the girl some time to accept the change of identity. But seeing Tang Fan's resistance, Song Si still felt very uncomfortable. He turned his head away and whispered, "Take a shower and change clothes quickly, don't catch a cold." Think about what I told you again. There's no rush. After that, Song-si fled from the room. Song-si's movements were very agile. As soon as he finished speaking, Tang Fan had not had time to react when he heard the sound of the door closing. Looking at the dust floating by the door, Tang Fan sat down on the ground, covered his face and sighed. How could things turn out like this? Tang Fan thought about it for a long time, and he almost broke his head, but he still couldn't figure it out. Outside the door, Song-si, who was leaning against the wall, was also restless. He had thought about how to break this window paper countless times, but he didn't expect it to be in this situation. It's not quite the same as he imagined, but it's good this way. Even if he didn't get the response he wanted. But thinking about the warm and soft touch, Song-si couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth. As time passed, the smile on Song-si's face gradually disappeared. Even if he was daydreaming, he didn't relax the vigilance that a soldier should have. The long-term silence in the room made him feel uneasy. Tang Fan wouldn't do anything stupid because of his abruptness. She is a patient now. Song-si couldn't help wanting to open the door next to her, but she was afraid that Tang Fan would misunderstand that she had bad intentions. Major General Song-si, who was always in command, rarely lost his composure. After hesitating for a long time, Song-si cast his eyes on Song-tong, who was eating melons online. Tong, go in and take a look. Song-tong's expression was wonderful when she was suddenly called while eating melons. But she still gritted her teeth, stood up, and walked towards the room in 3 steps. Who made her not only the adopted daughter of the Song family, but also the military doctor of the Expeditionary Army. Slowly putting her hand on the doorknob, twisting it reluctantly, Song-tong carefully pushed open a crack. Just such a crack, but it was enough for Song-si, who was paying close attention behind her, to clearly see the situation in the room. Looking at the motionless little girl on the ground, Song-si's mind was swept away. He pushed open the door, squeezed Song-tong who was blocking the door, and rushed in. 2 fingers were placed on Tang Fan's neck at lightning speed. The other hand stretched directly in the direction of Song-tong. Physical examination instrument, quick. Song-tong finally stood up, and immediately flipped a physical examination instrument in a hurry, and presented it to Song-si with both hands. When the body scanner flashed a series of green lights, she came to her senses. This is her job. She is the military doctor. But looking at Song-si's stern expression, she could only swallow the words alive. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 459 Difficult. Although Song-si is not a professional pharmacist, the operation of the body detector is not complicated. The green light is on all the way, and no abnormality is found. It doesn't matter who operates it. Looking at the body detector with green lights all the way, and then looking at the unconscious Tang Fan, Song-si couldn't help but frown. Is your thing broken? Song-tong snatched the body detector from his hand, rolled his eyes, took out a blood extractor, and gently ran it across Tang Fan's fingers. After a fierce operation, an analysis report full of data appeared in front of Song-tong. She read it quickly and looked at Song-si meaningfully. The content of paralysis potion in the blood has not changed much, and the content of love potion has been greatly reduced. There is no big problem. Song-tong said a lot of things, and Song-si, who was focused on Tang Fan, didn't hear a word except the last sentence. He frowned, pulled Song-tong and pressed, since you said there is no problem, then why is she unconscious? Seeing Song-si's rare stupidity, Song-tong did not have the excitement of watching melons as usual. She twitched her lips and gritted her teeth as she said, as a professional pharmacist, I tell you that the medicine in Tang Fan's body has 13 side effects besides paralysis and infatuation. Moreover, her acceptance and integration of this medicine are very high. Although the data of the physical examination are all green, a careful comparison will reveal that her height, weight, and even female characteristics have obviously redeveloped. Of course, it may also be related to what you gave her to eat. Song-tong paused and continued, although the things you gave restrained the efficacy of the infatuation potion, they did not have a significant restraining effect on other side effects. It even further shortened the efficacy of Miss Tao Kingxi's potion, allowing the paralysis potion to work again. That's a 7-fold concentration of paralysis potion. Let alone a human, even if it's a cow, it has to lie down. Okay, Song Si's ears turned red as he made a fool of himself for the first time in his life and was lectured by Song Tong. He picked up Tang Fan from the ground and walked straight to her bedroom. Song Tong quickly chased after her, yelling, "Hey, hey, hey! What do you want to do?" Taking advantage of someone's misfortune, Song Si gently put Tang Fan on the bed, then turned his head and rolled his eyes at Song Tong. "I just felt the ground was cold. What did you think of? Or, that guy's audio?" When Song Tong heard this, he waved his hands quickly. No, that's not the case." Song Si snorted coldly. "It's better not to." Song Tong touched his nose and said nothing. Song Si looked at her obviously guilty and felt itchy. However, now is not the time to settle accounts with Zaya Audio. The most urgent task is to take care of a little girl who has been tricked. "I'll go get a basin of hot water, you help her wipe it. I'll also lend her a set of your clothes and let her change." Song Tong didn't really want to agree to this kind of loss-making business that requires effort to sell clothes. But thinking about what Song Si said just now, Song Tong nodded reluctantly. Hot water was quickly brought over, and Song Tong resigned himself to helping Miss Tang Fan wipe her body and change her clothes, not noticing that the unconscious girl's ears were already red. The body can't move, but the consciousness is still clear. It's really too difficult. Chapter 460 Bed Sheets. Although Song Tong is also a girl, Tang Fan was still very embarrassed. Fortunately, Song Si was not there, otherwise, when she woke up, she would have to find a crack in the ground to crawl into. However, it was beyond Tang Fan's expectation that Major General Song Si, who is always calm and composed, was so confused because of him. Thinking about his inappropriate confession, Tang Fan's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. With such random thoughts, Tang Fan inadvertently ignored Song Tong's actions. So much so that she didn't even notice that Song Tong stopped. To be honest, Song Tong is not a physical loser. But it is not an easy task to serve a person who is soaking wet to wipe the bath and change clothes, and to ensure that he is refreshed. After finally cleaning up Tang Fan, Song Tong, who didn't want to move a finger, shouted directly at the door, "I've cleaned up the people for you, I don't care about the rest." When Tang Fan heard this, his heart skipped a beat. The next second, after a light click, a series of light footsteps gradually came to the bedside. Even though Tang Fan's body could not move, he could still feel the strong, worried eyes cast on him. Song Si's low voice followed, "What do you need me to do?" Song Tong said nothing, just pointed to the messy and water-stained bed sheet. Song Si immediately understood and gave Miss Tang Fan a textbook princess hug. "Okay. Change it." Such a coquettish operation directly shocked Song Tong. "It's okay that I lost a set of protective clothing, but I still have to match a bed sheet, right?" Song Si curled his lips. "It's just a bed sheet, I'll lend it to you, and I'll return you 10 sheets after returning to the alliance." Song Tong sighed, and then reluctantly stood up and did another job that did not belong to a military doctor. When the spotless new bed sheet was spread on it, Song Si couldn't help but twitch his mouth. How could he forget that Song Tong, as a military doctor, has a serious occupational disease? The white sheets and quilts that were in the same format as the wards. No matter if others find it offensive or not, he felt uncomfortable just looking at them. Especially since the person who was about to lie on them was a little girl that he cared about. This discomfort was even worse. "Don't you have other styles of sheets?" Song Tong curled her lips and said unhappily, "This is the only one. Use it if you want. If you don't want it, forget it." Song Si glared at Song Tong fiercely and gently put Tang Fan back on the bed. Song Tong sighed and complained, "We are both sisters from the same family, but your double standards are too obvious." Song Si picked up Song Tong's collar with one hand, dragged her straight to the door, threw her out, and sneered, "I see through it but don't say it, do you understand?" After that, this guy closed the dormitory door in front of Song Tong. If Song Tong hadn't dodged quickly enough, her straight little nose would have come into close contact with the door panel. The scene was too beautiful, and Song Tong couldn't even think about it. "Poor me, I am the legendary tool man, and a disposable one." Song Tong nodded sympathetically. Zaya Audio smiled and hugged his silly wife, saying with a smile, "Since the Song family is so unreliable, why don't you consider it and go directly to the arms of my Dao family?" Song Tong patted him unhappily and said coquettishly, "You want to trick me again? You found out all this?" Zaya Audio lowered his head and kissed her forehead. "Then do you agree?" Or do you agree? Song Tong smiled coquettishly. That depends on your performance. Chapter 461, Concern and Confusion. Song Si, who was standing behind the window, silently closed the window without leaving a crack after being forced to eat dog food. The subordinates who snatched the superior's sister and forced dog food on their superiors were simply courting death. Song Si didn't mind increasing the intensity of Xiaodao's training after his little girl recovered. Moving his wrists and ankles, Song Si sucked his teeth and moved towards Tang Fan's bed. Looking at the white bed sheet provided by Song Tong, and then looking at Tang Fan, who looked even paler and weaker against the bed sheet, Song Si's teeth hurt even more. He looked around and finally grabbed the blue and white checkered blanket and covered Tang Fan with it, and then he felt better. Lifting his foot to hook over a chair and sit down casually, Song Si's hand involuntarily reached towards Tang Fan's little face. Thinking of the little girl's previous reaction, Song Si's finger that was about to touch Tang Fan's lips turned a corner and gently touched her nose. You look like a smart girl, how could you be so careless? If I hadn't brought the potion with me, what would you have done? Thinking of this, Tang Fan was also scared. However, under the effect of the potion, even someone as sensitive as Song Si could not detect it. Song Si did not wait for a response and did not care. He continued to mutter, I was planning to apply for a vacation after returning to the Alliance and slowly talk about this matter. Who knew that plans could not keep up with changes? Suddenly this happened. Song Si paused and whispered, the moment I saw you lying on the ground, my mind was really blank. I finally came back to my senses and heard what Adam said. For the first time in my life, I felt at a loss and even forgot the potion that Mr. Lee gave me. I'm really sorry for making you suffer so much. Song Si's voice was very soft, but Tang Fan heard it clearly, and truly. If she was still awake, she would never hear these words in her life. It would be a lie to say that I was not moved. But it was just a little bit of touching. She didn't blame Song Si, because it wasn't his fault. But she didn't love Song Si either. At least, not yet. She wanted to speak to Song Si and make it clear, but unfortunately her body wasn't strong enough. In the end, she simply gave up and listened quietly to Major General Song Si's monologue. Unfortunately, Major General Song Si's storytelling ability was really not that good, and the boy's spring feelings were only a little better than her iron tree. Fortunately, he was a good storyteller, and he talked for more than half an hour. For the first time, Tang Fan knew that Major General Song Si had the potential to be a storyteller. If one day, Major General Song Si knew that his consciousness did not fall asleep with his body. The picture was so beautiful that Tang Fan couldn't help but shudder. Song Si, who had been paying close attention to her, noticed her abnormality at the first time, and immediately stopped talking. He used his position to summon two pharmacists in the channel. Song Tong, who was talking about love, and Tao Qingxi, who was analyzing the drug that had infected Tang Fan, thought that there was something wrong with Tang Fan, so they dropped what they were doing and rushed to her room. After knowing what happened and looking at the data from the body detector that did not fluctuate, the two of them rolled their eyes at the same time. They had seen what it meant to be confused by worrying too much today. Chapter 462 Difficulty. Ms. Tao Qingxi has never been polite to people who disturb her experiments. Even if the other party is a major general of the Alliance, Tao Qingxi is not afraid. She said bluntly, Major General Song, you have to have common sense even if you don't have knowledge, and you have to learn more if you don't have common sense. You have to turn over when you sleep, and vegetative patients will have muscle spasms when they encounter external stimuli. The patient is just shivering, you really don't need to make a fuss. According to experience, the patient will not wake up in more than 10 or 20 hours. If you are worried, I will give you the body detector, and you can check the patient's physical data at any time. If there is no abnormal data, please don't yell and waste medical resources. Major General Song Si was scolded like a grandson for the first time in his life, and he couldn't say a word. Looking at Song Si's frustrated look, Song Tong sighed silently. After all, they are half-siblings. Even if they are blinded by love, what can she do? Can she just leave it alone? If you are worried, I will stay and keep watch with you, Song Tong asked tentatively. Unexpectedly, Song Si only hesitated for a moment and nodded in agreement. Turning his head to look at the aggrieved look of Xiaodao outside the door, Song Tong just wanted to slap himself twice. Ms. Tao Qingxi saw all this, gently patted Song Tong's shoulder, and silently comforted this woman who was in a dilemma between love and family affection. Song Tong smiled bitterly and patted Tao Qingxi's hand, made an apologetic gesture to her boyfriend, and sat down next to Song Si in a proper manner. Seeing Song Tong's resigned look, Tao Qingxi almost laughed out loud. This time, with Song Tong, a professional pharmacist, waiting by the side, Song Si should not do anything weird again and disturb her research. Thinking of this, Miss Tao Qingxi happily went into her room and got busy. Frightened Miss Tao Qingxi decisively accelerated her pace this time. In just over 10 hours, she conducted a 360-degree, blind-angle research and analysis of the collected gas, and theoretically developed several restraint methods. Song Si and Song Tuang went to meet them happily after hearing the news. But soon, the two of them wilted like defeated roosters. Several necessary raw materials in the antidote developed by Tao Qingxi were not available on Weirustar, and Tao Qingxi's own stock was insufficient. Song Tong searched for a long time in his space buckle and barely pulled out some, but there were still two missing. The potion is no different from other potions, a little more or a little less will not work. Guarding the prescription, but not being able to take out the antidote, that feeling is simply unbearable. As a genius in pharmacy, Tao Qingxi has never felt so helpless. I'm sorry, Song Si stared at the prescription blankly and murmured, "It's okay. I know you've tried your best." Although he could understand it rationally, Song Si still couldn't accept it emotionally. The 2-meter-tall man's eyes were red in an instant. Tao Qingxi looked at him like that, and then looked at Tang Fan on the hospital bed, and couldn't help but clench his fists. "Jim Field, don't let me catch you," Song Si narrowed his eyes and said coldly. "I should be the one to say this." Song Tuang looked at the two excited people, and at Tang Fan, who was lying on the bed and looked quite good, and was puzzled. "Isn't he still fine?" Song Si and Tao Qingxi said in unison, lying in bed and unable to move. "How is that good?" Chapter 463 Hurting Each Other. Song Tuang rubbed his nose, laughed dryly twice, and closed his mouth silently. Seeing Song Tong's cowardly look, and then glancing at Song Si's surprised eyes, Tao Qingxi's face was full of embarrassment. "What are you looking at? Did I say something wrong?" Song Si waved his hand quickly. "We heroes think alike, and we couldn't be more correct. It's A Tong's fault. This guy doesn't care about the patient. As a superior, I will definitely criticize and educate him later." Tao Qingxi nodded seriously and walked away with his hands behind his back. Song the scapegoat Tong pointed at Song open-eyed and talking liar Si with a trembling finger, and growled, "To be honest, where did I go wrong?" Song Si took the body detector and carefully tested Tang Fan, and answered without raising his head, "He is an outsider and knows to worry about it, but you, as a sister, are still calm and show off your professional knowledge. Where do you say you went wrong?" Song Tuang looked at Song Si in astonishment, and for a moment he didn't know how to refute. After a long while, she couldn't help but mutter, "Sister is a treasure, sister is a grass." The sharp-eyed and sharp-eared Major General Song Si heard this sentence seriously. While comparing the data, he answered casually, "No way. Who makes the elder sister sooner or later become someone else's daughter-in-law, and the younger sister will sooner or later become my own daughter-in-law. This reason is too sufficient." As the person involved, Song Tong felt that she was actually convinced by Song Si. She shook her head quickly. It seems that this can shake this idea out of her head. The women of the Expeditionary Army will never admit defeat. What's more, then you call me wife, and see if Tang Fan will agree to you. Major General Song Si, who had just finished comparing the data, was frightened by this sentence and choked directly on his saliva. Listening to the deafening cough, Song Tong, who felt that he had won a game, raised his head with satisfaction and laughed up to the sky. The posture of a villain who had achieved success made Song Si's teeth itch. The two people, who were several dozen years old in total, started arguing with each other. The two did not notice that Miss Tang Fan, who had just finished a physical examination, had an accelerated heartbeat and a high body temperature at a certain moment. The word wife was enough to make a pure girl who could not move but was conscious feel shy. How could Song Si say such things so naturally? What was even more strange was that Song Tong was not surprised at all. So, when did Song Si start to like her? And how many people knew about it? Tang Fan, the pure girl, was very curious. She was looking forward to the Song brothers and sisters to say more about this matter, but she was also afraid that the outspoken brothers and sisters would say something embarrassing. Unfortunately, The Song brothers and sisters only mentioned a few words and successfully went off topic. At some point, they started talking about the little things of love, and turned to bedwetting when they were young, common sense mistakes they made when they were studying, and the embarrassing things they were caught for violating discipline during their military service. When people who know each other well hurt each other, it's so exciting. Tang Fan listened with great interest, so much so that even when the two stopped hurting each other, she still felt a little unsatisfied. What stopped the Song siblings from fighting was not something else, but Song Tong's alarm clock. It gently reminded the siblings that Tang Fan had been unconscious for a full 20 hours. Chapter 464 I understand. Both siblings knew what being unconscious for 20 hours meant. Song Si and Song Tong looked at each other, both with a serious expression. Song Si pursed his lips and pointed the body detector at Tang Fan again. You wouldn't know until you saw it, and you'd be shocked. They had just been examined, and all the data was normal, but only an hour later, there was a large fluctuation. Song Si, who could hold a 100-pound light energy weapon for an hour or two without changing his color, was shaking slightly at this moment. Song Tong pushed his back teeth, grabbed the body detector, and operated it himself. Professionals are professionals after all, even if they were panicking, but Song Tong's hand holding the body detector was extremely steady. In just a few minutes, Song Tong performed 3 body tests on Tang Fan, and each time there was new data. Strings of data were slowly transmitted. It was clearly in the hundreds a few minutes ago, but it suddenly adjusted to the tens a few minutes later, or even the fives. Such a large fluctuation was the first time even for Song Tong, the most professional. She held the body detector in one hand, and quickly turned on the light computer with the other hand, sending an emergency signal for help to Tao Kingxi, who was not far away. Although the combat scum Tao Kingxi rushed over at the first time, it was 2 minutes later that she arrived at the battlefield. As soon as Tao Kingxi entered the room, she rushed towards Song Tong. 2 professional pharmacists were having a professional discussion on Tang Fan's magnificent data. Song Si listened hard with both ears erect. He knew every word of the conversation between the 2 people separately, but when they were put together, he couldn't understand 8 out of 10 sentences. Moreover, the 8 most critical sentences were what he couldn't understand. Seeing his beloved lying there motionless, but he couldn't help at all, the feeling of powerlessness deeply surrounded Song Si, making him want to squeeze himself back to school and take another elective course in pharmacy. Unfortunately, there is no regret medicine in the world. He could only hold Tang Fan's hand tightly, staring at the 2 people's constantly moving lips, and the body detector that kept moving on Tang Fan's body, and he was so nervous that he couldn't speak. Song Tong and Tao Kingxi only talked for a few minutes, but Song Si felt like a century had passed. After Tao Kingxi had finally finished the 4th test for Tang Fan, Song Si's heart was already in his throat. In the constant temperature bedroom, beads of sweat had already condensed on the ends of his hair. Looking at his expectant but afraid of being hurt eyes, Tao Kingxi automatically omitted a lot of polite words and said directly, "There is no large-scale body data monitoring system here, and detailed body data cannot be collected. However, according to the information she gave me, before I, Zhang Awei and Chang Meng woke up, there was such a period of large fluctuations in body data. I think she should be waking up soon." Song Si was greatly relieved when he heard this. Seeing him like that, Tao Kingxi didn't know how to say the words on his lips for a while, and could only look at Song Tong for help. Song Tong was given a task in a critical situation, and his face was full of embarrassment. But who made him have poor professional skills and a special identity? She could only bite the bullet and added carefully, "You know, the medicine has been improved. No one can be sure when she will wake up and whether there will be other side effects." Song Si pursed her lips and nodded, "I understand. As long as she is fine, she can wake up at any time." Chapter 465 Returning a Favor. Tao Kingxi couldn't bear to leave, so she simply pulled a chair and sat down opposite Song Si. Song Tong quickly followed suit. None of the 3 spoke, but their eyes converged on Tang Fan. Tang Fan, who was as clear-headed as she could be, felt the concerned gazes of the 3 people, and the pressure suddenly doubled. She tried hard to control her stiff body. As long as she could make those who were worried about her feel at ease as soon as possible, Tang Fan would not hesitate even if it was extremely strenuous and consumed most of her mental energy. Anyway, she still had the mental power recovery potion, and her mental power would come back sooner or later. Even if she didn't have the mental power recovery potion, it wouldn't be impossible to lie in bed for a few more days. When the alarm rang again, Song-si got up and prepared to give Tang Fan another physical examination, and she finally moved. Although it was just a slight tremor of her fingers, it was enough to make the three people who were staring at her ecstatic. Tao Qingxi immediately stepped forward and replaced Song-si. After examining Tang Fan and injecting her with 2 potions of physical and mental recovery potions, Tang Fan's eyes, which had been closed for more than 20 hours, finally opened. Tang Fan only had time to give the 3 people a labored smile, and before she could say a word, she closed her eyes again because of physical strength. Her closing of her eyes made the 3 people present nervous. The 3 people took the body detector and checked her 3 times in a row. Fortunately, the 3 sets of data this time were not only close to each other, but also infinitely close to the values of normal people. It was as if the extremely overbearing potion that made Tang Fan unconscious for more than 20 hours suddenly disappeared overnight. Tang Fan had no abnormalities except for the double overdraft of physical and mental strength. This description was not completely accurate. In addition to overdrawing physical and mental strength, Tang Fan, who had long passed puberty, seemed to have ushered in the 3rd growth and development period. Whether it was height, weight, or even female characteristics, there was a certain improvement. Although it is still lower than the average level of women in the alliance, it is much better than the skinny bamboo pole before. Tao Qingxi pondered for a moment, tapped my palm, looked at Song-si, and said carefully, "What potion did you use on Tang Fan? Is there any more?" Song-si nodded. "I used a powerful antidote specially made by Mr. Li Bangsha to restrain the love potion. I didn't expect to encounter such a situation at the beginning, so I prepared 2 in total." Tao Qingxi frowned when he heard this. Tang Fan's physique is different from that of ordinary people, and this potion is specially made by Mr. Li Bangsha. If there are only 2, it is impossible to study it out. I'd better wait until I return to the alliance and then talk to the old man. The premise is that she has to live to that day. This thought flashed through her mind, but Tao Qingxi unconsciously clenched his fists. Song-si looked at Tang Fan on the bed, and then thought about Tao Qingxi back then. After hesitating for a moment, he took out the last powerful antidote for the love potion from his space and handed it to Tao Qingxi. "Take it. It would be great if you can copy the antidote, but if you can't, it gives me a reason to have sex with you. No matter how you calculate it, I won't lose." Tao Qingxi quickly took the potion and said with a smile, "When I return to the alliance, I will definitely return the favor and make 8 or 10 love potions for you so that you can get what you want." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 466 White Porridge. Tao Qingxi's teasing was nothing to Song-si, who had been in the military camp for many years, but it was enough to make the simple Tang Fan blush. Seeing her pretty face blushing, Tao Qingxi and Song Tong wanted to make a few more jokes, but under Song-si's warning eyes, they silently shut their mouths. They thought this was already a big concession, but who knew that Major General Song-si was not satisfied at all, and shot threatening eyes at the 2 of them in turn. Tao Qingxi snorted, raised his hand with the potion, turned around and walked out. There's no way, who let him be the boss? But he is short-handed and soft-mouthed. As Tao Qingxi left, Song-si's eyes as sharp as knives and arrows immediately fell on Song Tong, which made Song Tong's pressure increase sharply. After hesitating for a few seconds between watching the show and saving his life, Song Tong finally chose the latter and walked out of the door in 3 steps. After watching the 2 light bulbs go out, Song-si immediately stepped forward and slammed the door that was open a crack without hesitation. The thick door almost hit Song Tong's high nose. Did she just want to watch a show? Why is it so difficult? When Song-si moved the chairs that Tao Qingxi and Song Tong had sat on back to their original positions and returned to the bed, Tang Fan, whose physical and mental strength had recovered by more than half, finally couldn't help but open her eyes. Tang Fan thought she had used up all her acting skills in her life, but in Song-si's eyes, there were still many loopholes. It was just because he was afraid that the little girl would be embarrassed that Major General Song saw through it but didn't say it. Pretending that nothing had happened, Song-si slowly stretched out his hand to Tang Fan and held Tang Fan's hand. "How do you feel? Do you need another physical examination?" Tang Fan was about to shake her head, but her body didn't cooperate and made a light sound. Goo, it was the protest of the stomach that hadn't eaten for more than 20 hours. The innocent girl's face flushed again. Song Si held back his smile and patted her hand. Are you hungry? I'll prepare something for you. White porridge, okay, Tang Fan nodded. Such a simple action in daily life, but at this moment, it seems so difficult. Seeing Tang Fan struggling, Song Si's heart was once again in a knot. After finally finding all the things in the room, Song Si, the Major General, went to the kitchen. The tools that were as easy as using an arm in Tang Fan's hands were particularly disobedient in Song Si's hands. Washing rice, adding water, lighting the fire, cooking porridge. Tang Fan was doing very simple things, but it seemed particularly clumsy in Song Si's hands. Song Si spent an hour and went through 81 difficulties to finally make a pot of porridge. When it was about to be taken out of the pot, half of it was fed to the stove. Major General Song Si had to start learning mode again, learning how to clean the kitchen that looked like a car accident scene. Seeing Song Si's flustered, Tang Fan was amused and moved. A man who can be confused for you, who can beg for help for you, and who can learn to make a bowl of porridge for you when you need it. Then the love this man said should be true. Lying on the bed, drinking the porridge Song Si handed to him, Tang Fan finally did as Song Si wished and began to think seriously. Unfortunately, after a bowl of porridge, Tang Fan did not come to any other conclusions except that Song Si liked him. This was not just a little different from what Song Si wanted, but a million miles away. But at least, the girl's stupid head finally came to her senses, right? It was really cause for celebration. Chapter 467 Attack Again. Practice makes perfect, and this is applicable everywhere. With the unsuccessful experience of the first time, Song Si was much more skillful when making porridge. The time was short, and the porridge basically went into Tang Fan's mouth instead of the stove. After being forced by Song Si to drink white porridge for 2 days, Tang Fan finally got the precious opportunity to get out of her bed with a joint guarantee of Tao King Si and Song Tong. Freedom was not easy to come by, and Tang Fan cherished it very much, so when Song Si asked her to rest, she really didn't fiddle with her gadgets. Of course, fear was also part of the reason. But Miss Tang Fan would not admit it. The leisurely Tang Fan was simply the most leisurely person in the garrison. Look, in the evening, when everyone was busy, this guy was actually lying on the grass leisurely to watch the sunset. The afterglow of the sunset sprinkled on her body, coating her with a layer of rosy glow, so beautiful that people couldn't take their eyes away. Emelfield watched from a distance and couldn't help but sigh. It's all Olaf's fault, otherwise, there wouldn't be any surname Song. Olaf? Oh. The one born after Tao King Si was plotted against, the only third generation of Field? How can a genetically modified person who is neither human nor ghost compare with Song Si? Emelfield's face is really big. Hameo Kayasuk rubbed his ears on the side, thinking that he was just a piece of wood and didn't hear anything. Hameo Kayasuk didn't want to get involved in Tang Fan's affairs at all. In the past, it was for the sake of Tang's mecha. Now, Hameo Kayasuk counted silently in his heart, 10, 9, 8, 7, when the number 1 came out of his mouth. He saw the figure of Major General Song Si without any surprise. Looking at him, and then looking at the unreliable Emelfield beside him, Hameo Kayasuk had an illusion that he had followed the wrong boss. Or, it was not an illusion at all? Kayasuk Hameo was still daydreaming, but the light computer in his hand emitted a red light at an inopportune time. What followed was a shrill alarm. Whether it was Emelfield and Kayasuk Hameo, or Song Si and Tang Fan, they all ran towards the command center at the same time. Although the situation was urgent, everyone still did not forget to make way for Song Si and leave a seat. Therefore, Song Si saw the situation on the monitoring screen at a glance. The familiar 3-3 formation, one in front and one behind, 2 echelons of 18 mechas, made Song Si's face change suddenly, and he also successfully poked Tang Fan's lung tube. Song Si turned his head and glanced at Tang Fan behind him. His expression became more and more ugly. A series of instructions soon came to Song Si's mouth. Just as he was about to speak, he felt a slight shaking of the cuffs. Song Si looked over along his sleeves, and the little girl shook her head slightly, with a disapproving look, so that the words on his lips were swallowed alive by him. The enemy is attacking, and we must fight. But how to fight cannot be decided rashly. A commander-in-chief, the most important thing is to be calm enough. and now he is obviously not suitable to be the commander-in-chief. Song Si took a deep breath, and touched his back teeth. Since it is the problem found by glasses, then let glasses solve it. The command power is temporarily handed over to glasses, and everyone will follow his command in all actions. Tang Fan slowly loosened his hand that was pinching Song Si's sleeve, and the corners of his mouth slightly raised an arc. Chapter 468 Good. Everyone has weaknesses. Song Si is no exception. After handing the command to Yanjing, Song Si turned around and pulled Tang Fan, and strode out of the command center. The bedroom door closed gently, and Tang Fan's calm mask was immediately torn to pieces. She was like a rag doll, sliding down the door panel. Song Si looked at Tang Fan like this, and his heart was clenched with pain. Ignorance is fearless. But Tang Fan was a person who had seen what Tang Meng, Tao Qingxi and Zhang Awei became under the effect of the potion. This damn potion was not only the nightmare of these three experimental subjects, but also Tang Fan's nightmare. In other words, it was the common nightmare of women who knew the whole story. I thought this nightmare was far away from me. But when the potion acted on Tang Fan and the nightmare followed him like a shadow, how terrified Tang Fan would be. It was because of this that Song Si wanted to intercept the beast-shaped mecha at all costs in a place where Tang Fan could not touch it. However, the little girl was stronger than he thought. She overcame her fear, pulled her sleeves, and stopped her hasty and wrong decision. Song Si sat down next to her slowly. Then, he stretched out his hand, hugged her shoulders, and exerted a little force. Tang Fan followed this force and put his head on Song Si's shoulder. Major General Song's shoulders were very broad, and the warmth of his body was transmitted through the contact point, which made people feel at ease inexplicably. Tang Fan's tense body slowly relaxed. Feeling the strength on his shoulders, Song Si did not feel the joy of taking advantage, but endless heartache. Don't be afraid. I'm here. If Tao Qingxi was here, he would definitely say it's because of you that it's scary, but at this moment, Tang Fan, who was panic-stricken and helpless, had long lost the ability to confront others, or even the ability to think. Her body trembled slightly, like a leaf in the wind. She was cold all over, and she tried hard to absorb the temperature from the small area where their skin touched. Feeling the little girl's fear, Major General Song Si, who was always in command, was at a loss for what to do. Everyone thought that Major General Song Si was omnipotent. But in fact, no matter how powerful a person is, he has his shortcomings. Major General Song Si scolded many girls to tears, but to coax a girl, let alone practical experience, Major General Song Si had never thought of this in his mind. Major General Song tried hard to find it in his mind, and finally recalled the scene of Ms. Yao coaxing him to sleep after the first encounter with the Stark Pirates. Although he felt that it was a bit hot, looking at Tang Fan, who had dull eyes and a sluggish look, and was obviously abnormal, Song Si could only treat a living horse as a dying horse. In the empty dormitory, Song Si's low voice rang softly, the dark skies low, and the bright stars follow. The gentle nursery rhyme made Tang Fan's body tremble, and he looked at Song Si in disbelief. Major General Song, who managed his expression well, was blushing at this moment. Looking at Song Si like this, Tang Fan felt that Song Si might like her a little more than she thought. In this case, could she be a little more willful? Tang Fan pursed his lips and whispered, can the work of assembling the beast-shaped mecha be handed over to someone else? Song Si turned his head to look at Tang Fan and nodded, okay. Chapter 469 No Loss. Tang Fan was giving up her responsibility for the first time in her life, and she was feeling anxious when she heard Song Si's decisive answer. She looked at Song Si in disbelief, as if she was looking at a tyrant who only listened to one side. Seeing Tang Fan's subtle expression, Song Si couldn't help but reach out and give her a brain slap. What are you thinking about random things? The Expeditionary Army has its own mecha founder. Although it is not as good as you, it is still competent for the minimum work. You are not a member of the Expeditionary Army, and the other is a patient. What can I do with you? However, from my standpoint, I still hope you can provide remote guidance. Of course, it would be better to publish a video or drawing. Tang Fan thought for a while, put his palm upwards in front of Song Si. In Shanghain, the patent transfer fee. Song Si patted her palm angrily. I owe it. Let's calculate it together when the time comes. Seeing Song Si deserves a beating, Tang Fan couldn't help but tick. When you mention the money, you will turn your face. Major General Song's likes is really. Song Si paused, turned his head and smiled evilly at Tang Fan. which scared Tang Fan so much that he took several steps back. However, Song-si did not let her go and pressed her step by step. Tang Fan retreated step by step until he could no longer retreat. He then leaned against the wall and said in a timid tone, "What do you want to do?" Song-si scratched the tip of Tang Fan's nose and laughed. "What do you want to do?" Tang Fan held his hands and looked around nervously, fearing that Song-si would say something shocking and make them the laughingstock of others. Seeing Tang Fan's nervousness, Song-si couldn't help but smile. Then, he leaned close to Tang Fan's ear and whispered, "It's inconvenient for me to do anything in public. Forget it. Let me talk to you about reason." From this posture, it doesn't look like he is talking about reason at all. But since Song-si said he wanted to talk about reason, Tang Fan talked to him seriously. As a young man from the alliance with a good family background, Tang Fan was not afraid of talking about reason at all. She put her hand on Song-si's face and tried to push him away at arm's length. "Just talk, why are you getting so close?" Song-si pushed his back teeth, clicked his tongue, and gave Tang Fan a brain smack. Then he barely stood up. As the head of Tang's mecha, you should know the difference between public and private. Tang Fan got anxious when he heard this. "What do you mean?" Song-si slowly took out a borrow 1 and return 4 contract he and Tang Fan signed from the space button, turned to the last page, and clicked. On the big red seal, the words First Group Army of the Expeditionary Force almost blinded Tang Fan's titanium alloy dog eyes. As smart as she was, she understood the meaning of his words without Song-si saying a word, whether it was borrow 1 and return 4 or the patent transfer fee for the assembly drawings. The debtor was the First Group Army of the Expeditionary Force, and it had nothing to do with him, Song-si. Even though Song-si himself was a major general of the First Group Army of the Expeditionary Force. If this happened in the alliance, Tang Fan would not be afraid at all. But now, they are 108,000 miles away from the alliance, and it is not certain whether they can go back. Tang Fan suddenly felt angry that he had fallen into a trap. However, he was deceived and voluntarily did it, and he could not say anything wrong about Song-si. Tang Fan looked at the red seal and almost vomited internal injuries. However, Song-si added fuel to the fire and said, "Don't be angry. We are going to be together. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is still yours. This IOU is not very meaningful. But it's different if the borrower writes the First Army of the Expeditionary Force. Even if we are together, you will not suffer any loss, right?" Chapter 470 Lower Limit. Song-si's words made sense at first, but Tang Fan felt something was not right. Before Tang Fan could figure it out, a gentle kiss landed on her forehead, attracting all her attention. Tang Fan didn't care about it and kicked a lecture in front of her. But whether she was more annoyed or shy, Tang Fan herself was not sure. Looking at Tang Fan's red hairs, Song-si stabilized her restless body and took the kick. After all, he was her cheap brother. When Tang Fan raised his foot, he used 10 points of strength, but when it landed on Song-si, only 5 points were left. That strength, for Song-si, was almost like tickling. But Song-si still showed his 120% acting skills, pretending to be grinning and heartbroken. Unfortunately, Song-si's acting skills were not very good. Tang Fan, who saw through everything, was so angry that he raised his fist and hit Song-si's chest hard. Song-si let Tang Fan hide her for a few times, then he took the angry little girl into his arms and said with a smile, "Stop hitting me. If you hurt my hand, I'll feel bad." Tang Fan was shocked by Song-si's words, and had a better understanding of his shamelessness and shamelessness. But joy was like a string of bubbles, which could not be suppressed from the bottom of his heart, making Tang Fan unable to ignore it. The tug of war between reason and emotion made Tang Fan stand there, looking dazed. Taking off the smart coat, Tang Fan looked particularly cute. So cute that Song-si couldn't help but lower his head and kiss her again. It was just a light touch on the forehead, but it successfully stimulated Tang Fan and made her return to her usual self. She kicked Song-si and said unhappily, "You are so annoying. Go away." The fierce look, in Song-si's eyes, did not seem to be fierce, but rather like a spoiled child. "It's impossible to walk away, not in this lifetime. But you promised me that you would think about it carefully. How are you thinking about it now?" Tang Fan turned his head away, not wanting to pay attention to him. Song-si shamelessly leaned close to Tang Fan's ear, and asked again in a low voice. The warm breath hit Tang Fan's ear, successfully making Tang Fan's face warm up. Tang Fan felt that she had underestimated the thickness of Song Si's face. She turned her head and glared at Song Si, tapping his chest. Is this your attitude to pursue a girl? Can you be a little more shameless? Song Si held her hand and smiled softly. But they all say that if you are too shameless, you will not have a girlfriend. What can I do? Of course I choose to be shameless and choose you. Song Si said shameless words openly, confidently and proudly, which shocked Tang Fan. Tang Fan looked at her with a look that was hard to describe, not knowing what words to use to express his crazy psychological activities. Just when Tang Fan was organizing his words, Song Si spoke again. This is my first time chasing after a girl. I have no experience. Please bear with me. Tang Fan's blood tank was completely empty. He blurted out, you are like this, it really doesn't look like your first time chasing after a girl. When Song Si heard this, he chuckled. Thank you for the compliment. I will keep up the good work. Looking at Song Si's smug look, Tang Fan silently clenched her fists. At that moment, she had the urge to smash his head. However, before she did anything, Song Si moved first. Another kiss, right on the tip of her nose. Tang Fan forgot the words that were about to come to his lips. Chapter 471. Song Si looked at Tang Fan, who was dumbfounded again, and smiled softly. Afin, I thought I liked you enough, but every day I seem to like you a little more. Boom. Tang Fan's already red face was like an explosion, her heart was beating like thunder, and she couldn't say a word. Song Si played with a strand of Tang Fan's hair, whispered in her ear, I like you so much, you also like me a little bit, okay. When he said the last three words, he said it very softly, like a feather, gently brushing across her heart. It made her heart itch. But she couldn't make Tang Fan promise anything. She opened her mouth, her lips trembled a little, but in the end she couldn't say anything. Seeing her entangled, Song Si couldn't help but curl the corners of his mouth. I don't want you to respond to me now, I will wait for you, no matter how long it takes. After that, he turned around and strode away. Tang Fan breathed a sigh of relief, and was about to leave with him, but when he turned around, he saw Song Tong smiling maliciously. Tang Fan gasped in fear, patted his chest, and finally recovered. Ah Tong, as a pharmacist, you should know that scaring people to death is the truth. Song Tong sighed, how dare I? You are a woman that our Major General likes a little more every day. Tang Fan, who finally recovered, successfully choked himself with his own saliva after hearing this. The earth-shaking cough successfully pleased Song Tong. She smiled and added fuel to the fire, saying, be steady. If Song Si knew that I choked you, she would kill me. Tang Fan blushed at what Song Tong said, and his iron teeth suddenly became weak. In the end, he could only stomp his feet and run away. Seeing Tang Fan running away in a panic, Song Tong couldn't help laughing. Xia Adao, who was standing aside, looked at his unlucky wife and couldn't help rubbing his temples. Song Tong didn't know that all the pranks she had done would have retribution. Other people's sons had to pay for their father's debts, but for him, it became the husband who had to pay for his wife's debts. Today, Song Tong had gone so far, and he didn't know how Song Si would torture him. Is it so fun to tease others? Song Tong laughed. I don't know if teasing others is fun or not. But teasing Tang Fan is the most fun thing in the world. This is the best opportunity to see Song Si's face change. If you miss this opportunity, you won't have it again. Xia Adao looked at the smug Song Tong and shut his mouth silently. What else can he do if he falls in love with such a woman who only wants to cause chaos in the world? Even if he has to settle accounts with Song Si, he can only let it go. Anyway, Song Tong's surname is Song after all, and she can barely be considered Song Si's half-sister. Even if she goes too far, Song Si can't make things difficult for her. He will never admit it, and he also wants to see Song Si's joke. For this reason, even if he is punished more severely, it is worth it. Thinking of this, Xia Adao couldn't help but laugh. He had been with Major General Song Si for too long. He didn't learn anything else, but he learned to calculate gains and losses. He didn't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing. However, from the current point of view, it shouldn't be considered a bad thing. It took Xia Adao only a few seconds to figure it out. Song Tong didn't even have time to notice it. He smiled and tapped Song Tong's nose. If you are so naughty again in the future, be careful that Song Si will punish you. Chapter 472 Revenge. As an excellent commander, intelligence has always been one of Song Si's best subjects. Knowing yourself and the enemy, you can fight 100 battles without danger. Under such combat readiness, no disturbance in the entire garrison could escape Song Si's ears and eyes. Xiao knew that his revenge would always be late, not absent. But he didn't expect it to be so fast and so fierce. Song Si didn't beat him, scold him, or increase his training intensity. He just issued a task to Xiao. Xiao, who has the highest force value in the Kekken Guard, is not afraid of beatings, scolding, or increased training intensity, but he can't face this escort task with the lowest difficulty coefficient. In fact, it is not difficult to stand at the door of Kioxi to prevent accidents from happening during his disassembly and assembly of the mecha. The difficult part is, in case of an accident, the rescue plan given by Song Si. Major General Song, is there really no antidote? Song Si nodded decisively. There are two in total, one in Tang Fan's stomach and one in Ms. Tao Kingxi's hands. So far, there has been no progress. Our mecha parts are limited. According to Tang Fan's method, using the beast-type mecha is the only solution at present. Tang Fan is ill, and Kioxi must be foolproof. Any mission that falls into the hands of our expeditionary force can only be carried out. If there are conditions, we must go, and if there are no conditions, we must create conditions and go. It would be best if nothing happens in Kioxi. If there is any accident, please bear more and show the Brotherhood of the Alliance. The three words Alliance Brotherhood have carried an unspeakable ambiguity since the day they were born. Before the legalization of same-sex marriage, in most cases, it was used by the Alliance people with an overwhelming desire to survive to describe the gay love that could not be announced to the public. Thinking about the knowledge about the potion he had heard from Song Tong, and thinking about Xiao Zai's figure that looked like a black iron tower, Xiao felt a tightness in his body, and he felt unwell. Major General Song, this is not appropriate. Xiao voice was obviously trembling, and he seemed particularly weak and helpless. But Song Si seemed not to have heard it at all, and stuffed the gas collector in his hand into his arms, turned around and left. The steps were clean and neat, without a trace of hesitation. Xiao, who was left behind, had despair in his eyes. The 1.9-meter tall man, holding the odor collector in his arms, almost cried. At this time, he also heard Xiao Zai's broken gun-like voice, which seemed to come from afar as if through something. Are you so reluctant to open the door for me? Are you still brothers? Xiao thought it was a prank by Song, and when he was about to escape, he suddenly felt a little weight on his shoulder. Xiao's body stiffened, and he slowly turned his head like a rusty robot. The moment his eyes met Xiao Zai, Xiao almost shed tears of excitement. Xiao Zai was wearing 2 layers of isolation suits outside his black protective suit, and his entire head was protected by the mask in all directions. In order to breathe smoothly, he even carried 4 cans of purified air behind him. This outfit was 100% from Song Si's handwriting. He had prepared everything, but he didn't say a word in front of him. Song Si, this guy, has too much revenge. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 473 Night Owl. Xiao, who was relieved, felt his legs go weak. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. If Kioxi hadn't helped him in time, he would have fallen to the ground in disgrace. Kioxi's expression was simply ridiculous. Xiao, who felt ashamed, threatened and lured Kioxi, and finally shut Kioxi up. But Xiao didn't know that his dark history was recorded by a pinhole camera by a major general besides Kioxi. Although he didn't know when it would be useful, it's always better to be prepared. It's not known whether Xiao and Kioxi were lucky or unlucky. When they were dismantling the first mecha, the potion that Tang Fan encountered broke out. Fortunately, Kioxi was well prepared and Xiao was quick to react, so both of them were fine. However, the disassembly of the mecha was urgently stopped by Song Si and put on hold. After all, the mechas modified from this batch of beast-type mechas are only used as substitutes and strategic reserves. Song Si is still not sure whether there are any disadvantages or whether they will come in handy. Although he made a spoof of Xiao, he was too embarrassed to force him to do such a dangerous job when he knew that Xiao might become his cheat brother-in-law and he didn't have the antidote. Of course, he would not take risks with Tang Fan. The only one who could break this deadlock might be Tao Qingxi, who locked himself in the room. This thought only lasted for a moment before Song-si decisively gave it up. Putting all his hopes on others is not his style. He can't just sit and wait for death. He didn't know how much of this potion the other party had. But this potion seemed to be a toad on the upper of a shoe, which could not bite people to death but was annoying. However, in just a few days, it had become a nightmare in the minds of Tang Fan and Tao Qingxi, and also a toy that Xia Adao and others kept away from, greatly weakening their combat effectiveness and becoming their shortcoming. If he continued to let it go, what would happen? Song-si didn't know, nor did he want to know. He was never the type to sit and wait for death. Since the other party used a dirty trick, he had no intention of being polite to the other party. It was just a potion, who didn't have a few in the bottom of the box? As for the delivery method, he didn't have so many beast-type mecha warriors to die, but since the aircraft could be controlled, the beast-type mecha. Song-si's mouth curled up, and he went to Tang Fan and muttered a few words. Tang Fan, who was bored, was no longer bored all of a sudden. He pulled Xiao Zai and Song-si together to study for a day and a night. Soon, a flying machine named Night Owl was born from the hands of the three of them. This aircraft has only three main functions. First, invisibility. Only with a good invisibility function can you get infinitely close to the target. Second, remote control. Mental control is the other party's strong point. They have no way to copy and surpass it, so they can only work hard on the feel of remote control. Although it is a bit low end and not up to standard, it is more important to be useful than anything else. Third, small size. Although the name of the Night Owl sounds impressive, in reality, its cabin is extremely small, only big enough to hold 3 regular medicines. Including the control room and the fuselage, the entire machine is not much bigger than a pigeon. Although the Night Owl is small and exquisite, Song-si and Tang Fan are full of expectations for it. Chapter 474 Progress. The design process of the Night Owl went very smoothly, but the manufacturing process is not worth mentioning. The Night Owl is small in size, so the requirements for materials and production processes are naturally relatively high. In this place where no one lives, the only way to obtain high-quality materials is to dismantle the opponent's beast-type mecha. Before the opponent used the potion, this was not a big deal. But after the accident, looking at the familiar beast-type mecha, the scene of that day began to churn in Tang Fan's mind. At the same time, the faces of Tang Mangan, Tao Qingxi and Zhang Avi flashed in front of her like a revolving lantern. Thinking about their endings, Tang Fan's cold sweat couldn't stop coming out, and his limbs became weak. In this situation, it was difficult to stand, let alone casting an aircraft. Song-si saw her abnormality at a glance, frowned and sent her out. Without Tang Fan, the casting progress of the aircraft was delayed, and Xiao Zai had to be fed dog food. He was not feeling well, but he had no place to protest. Fortunately, Tang Fan only had a physical aversion to mechas. As long as Song-si and Xiao Zai sent over mecha materials that could no longer be seen in their original form, she would have no problem. However, in this way, all the parts needed to be forged by Tang Fan one by one, which increased the number of processes and naturally slowed down the progress. In order to speed up the progress, Tang Fan, who felt guilty, kept her sleep time within 6 hours for 7 days. On the most exaggerated day, she only slept for a short period of 3.5 hours. After 7 days, the first Night Owl was finally made, but Tang Fan also fell down due to overwork. Song-si looked at Tang Fan, then looked at Night Owl number 1, which was almost exactly the same as the design, and took a deep breath. Seeing that the situation was not right, Xiao Zai quickly protected Night Owl number 1 in his arms and ran back to his studio in 2 steps. Looking at Song-si's red eyes, Xiao Zai was afraid that he would not be able to control himself for a while and smash the Night Owl that Tang Fan had worked so hard to make. Although he, Xiao Zai, had never been in love, he had never eaten pork, but he had never seen pigs run, right? The drama of going all out for a beauty looks beautiful, but if it comes at the cost of Night Owl, then the cost is probably too high. Xiao Zai looked at the Night Owl in his arms and shook his head, trying to shake the horrible picture out of his head. Tang Fan was exhausted and couldn't take care of Night Owl for a while. Song-si was only concerned about Tang Fan's anxiety and didn't care about this treasure. Instead of waiting for Song-si to destroy this treasure, it would be better to let him observe and understand it thoroughly. Xiao Zai placed the Night Owl on the workbench in an orderly manner. After conducting a comprehensive inspection of it, he took a deep breath and picked up his most handy disassembly tool. As an excellent mecha foundry, he may not be good at forward development, but he has absolutely no problem with reverse development. In fact, Xiao Zai does have a talent in this area. When Tao Qingxi and Song Tong were urgently summoned by Song Si to treat Tang Fan and repeatedly confirmed that Tang Fan only had a large loss of mental power and could rest, Xiao Zai had already arranged the parts of Night Owl on the workbench in order of size. Then? That's it. It's impossible to restore it. Thinking about a method Song Si used to punish Xiao Dao, Xiao Zai couldn't help but shudder. Looking at the pile of parts in front of him, Xiao Zai took a deep breath and made a major decision. If he couldn't copy Yi Xiao, he could copy a batch of parts. When the time comes, when Song Si settles the accounts, he can at least make up for his mistakes a little bit. Chapter 475, Potion. Kaoxi was not wrong. When Song Si came to him and saw the broken Night Owl, he really wanted to tear his heart apart. Although Song Si did not say anything for the sake of continuing to be a mecha foundry engineer and seeing that he made many identical parts, Kaoxi still read the meaning of the death penalty can be avoided, but the living crime cannot be escaped from Song Si's expression. Thinking about a move that fell on Xiao Dao at the beginning, and that one day in the future it will fall on him, Kaoxi couldn't help but shudder. For a long time, this Iron Tower-like man has been keeping his tail between his legs in front of Song Si. As for sleeping 5 or 6 hours a day and working overtime to make parts, that has become his job. Fortunately, Tang Fan just overused his mental power. After sleeping for a day and taking a mental power recovery potion, he appeared in front of Song Si again. Song Si's expression finally looked a little better, and Kaoxi was relieved. Knowing that Kaoxi had dismantled the Night Owl, Tang Fan did not react much. He just checked the parts one by one, reassembled them at 3 times the speed himself, patted Kaoxi on the shoulder, and went back to recuperate. Song Si sighed, threw back the half-finished parts in his hand, imitated Tang Fan, patted Kaoxi on the other shoulder, and followed Tang Fan's pace. Kaoxi looked at both shoulders of his own, and then looked at the various materials in the room, and the Night Owl that had just been restored, and wanted to cry but had no tears. Does this mean that he should work alone? He finally knew what it meant to settle accounts after the autumn. What did it mean that retribution will only be late, not absent? He also finally knew that the most ruthless person in the entire base was not Song Si, but Tang Fan, who smiled all day and seemed to have no temper. It's just that I dismantled the aircraft you assembled, and I bothered you to come again. Is it that serious? So many things, how long will he have to do it alone? One day, he will also pass out due to excessive mental exhaustion. In fact, Kaoxi underestimated himself. Before he could faint, a row of 12 Night Owl aircraft were neatly placed on his workbench. Major General Song Si personally inspected this batch of Night Owl aircraft, but did not say a word to Xiao Zai. He just asked Xiao Dao to collect a paralysis potion specially made for mutant creatures from his brothers. In recent years, they have been on the front line against mutant creatures most of the time. There may not be other things in the space buckle, but there are a lot of these things. These days, they have long felt that this thing takes up space, but they are reluctant to throw it away. When they heard that Song Si wanted to use it, everyone donated it without hesitation, and directly filled Xiao Zai's studio. Looking at the paralysis potion in the studio, Xiao Zai only felt a headache, toothache, all over his body, everywhere hurt. Seeing Xiao Zai in pain, Song Si's mood was much better. That night, Song Si personally took charge of the 12 Night Owls, carrying a full load of paralysis potions, and made a test flight. Song Si moved his fingers slightly, and 36 paralysis potions were opened at the same time in the designated area. A fragrance of sewers instantly spreading to 1/5 of the planet. The genetically modified people in this area began to show various adverse reactions. Weak limbs, slow reaction, blurred consciousness. There are so many things, and it varies from person to person. Or is it because of the degree of genetic modification? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.